Thank you very much. Okay, everyone. Welcome to the LMS Masterclass on day 2 of CS EdX 2023. I'm Lisa Carey. I'm the Dean Learning and Teaching Innovation in the Division of Learning and Teaching. And I'm presenting today with Lachlan Kalash, who is our Learning Innovation Lead in the division and also our lead in training in the LMS project. Today, we're lucky enough to have a group of experts from the ground, from the field, talking about their experiences with the LMS. And this is a really exciting moment for us. So, as you will know, the Blackboard that we call at Charleston Interact 2 is nearing the end of its life. And our new LMS, Brightspace, is from the company called D2L, Desire to Learn, has become our main focus, our major project for 2023. It's an imperative for Charles Sturt. This particular platform has been adopted by over 1,300 higher education institutions across the world. It's become very, very popular. And there's a reason for that, and that's because of the interface, and we'll learn more about that today. We've had a lot of positive feedback, including from when we were looking at the tenders and also from our current pilot and early adopters and other groups going through and experiencing it at the moment. We also have some early go live schools and courses that are jumping in, and everyone's really enjoying the user-friendly interface and the extensive features. Some of the significant advantages around this platform is the creating and delivering of teaching content or learning materials, and also how we engage with students. We are looking for some reason these might be timed as well. We are also looking for and finding ways to reduce administrative load, which is absolutely vital for staff. So there's been a lot of talk about Brightspace, but the real proof is in the academics using the system with actual subjects. And that's what we're going to talk about today and see today. Pilot training has commenced. A full training schedule will be published via the LMS site at the end of November, and you can just go and book yourself into that training. But also, although it hasn't been rolled out university-wide yet, as we've said, some folks have already started working on their subjects, and we're looking forward to hearing from them today. And I think you'll enjoy seeing the interface because it is really impressive. Today, I'm working with Lachlan, and we're lucky enough to have the following folks who have volunteered to share their experience with Brightspace. We have Lloyd Dolan, who's going to take us through his subject site of the First Nations Cultural Awareness Journey. We have Carolyn O'Dwyer and Hector Rodriguez Valdez, who are from Participation and Pathways. And we have Kathy Finlay from Student Services. So my thanks to all of you for your work on this. So on that note, each group's got a slide, and then they'll take us in to their showcase. So, Lloyd, over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. So we're going to look at the First Nations Cultural Awareness Journey. So currently it's called the Indigenous Cultural Competency Program. So a lot of staff here may have already done that program. It's also being used by students. So Charles Sturt students and staff have access. Plus, it's also open to all other universities. So we have students from places like Deakin, from Edith Cowan, and from Sydney Uni, students and staff doing it as well. So over the past couple of years, we've been averaging around 500 participants a year completing the program. We actually have more than that actually enroll with a 93% overall completion. The current program is hosted in a WordPress site, which is external to Blackboard. So it in itself is a lot of work, very manual, work intensive. So how it works, for example, our external bodies can use their university logins to access it, but we also have community organisations and departments like Education Department, Health Department. We actually physically have to go into WordPress and add those students individually to the program to get them access and login details. And how it currently works, there's 2 assessment events. There's a short quiz, 20 multiple choice quiz, and a written reflection. So when you complete the quiz in the WordPress site, we get an email at the ICCP at CSU, gives us your results. So basically, I then have to put that onto a spreadsheet with against your name and email and record that. And then you submit your assessment to that email at the university. So both external to WordPress. Now, if you haven't submitted your written reflection within a 2-week period after completing the quiz, we then do a follow-up email to you just saying, congratulations, you completed the quiz. In order to complete the program, get a certificate, you need to submit the reflection, and we actually give you the reflection questions you're asked to go back onto. If we then get your reflection, then we manually do up a certificate and issue you with a certificate. The staff, we keep a record, which is then uploaded to staff records. Where students are doing it as part of a subject, we then have to separate all the students and go, okay, this is a postgrad midwifery subject. We send the course coordinator or subject coordinator a list of all the students who have completed. So you can see it's quite manual work intensive to manage that number of students over that 12-month period. The program doesn't have a start and end date. And so what we've looked at, particularly with the new LMS and Brightspace, is how do we reduce particularly a lot of that manual work. And so what we've managed to do, so you can see the screen with the picture. So the current ICCP program, you can see the icons, and it just says learning place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Doesn't actually tell you a content or what's in those learning places. So what it means is if you go into the program and you start working, then you've got to remember which topic you were in and what learning place that was in. There's no keys to tell you where you were at or what the topic's even about. If I can share. So can I share my screen, Lisa?
Yep, I've stopped sharing. You should be able to share now, Lloyd. Yep, here we go.
Here we go. So this is the new look in Brightspace. So as you can see, a little bit cleaner. We have the welcome. So all this content and layout was in the original program. We've just redesigned it. It has the tabs that you can open out where you can then actually just select those items to have a look at them. So for example, in the history in the background, so we've put in accordions. We talk about the original program, who's been involved in the redevelopment to date. So we have staff and community members that have been involved, particularly keeping in mind the Bathurst Elders Group, who were part of the original design. So ensuring that their voices are maintained throughout the program. The learning content is in the learning places. So what we've now done with the menu, and because that menu option is there, you can actually see the topics. Now, as you work through, obviously you get a tick to say that you've done those. So I've been good and got a tick in every box, more because I've been working in there. So when you then click on it actually brings up the topics that are covered within that. So again, as you complete, you'll get a tick to say where you're up to. So when you click on a topic, for example, in the content, we have some video carousels in data, and some will have videos in them. We have resources built into every topic where people can extend their learning. So if they're, for example, it might be a law student, they can actually use some of this information for their studies and for their assignments. So we've positioned it so, particularly learners or even our staff might see some resources they might want to use in their teaching. So again, we provided that information and overview of topics and a whole list of references for people to. So in the current program, there's not a lot of references. There's not these keys to extending your learning as well. Now, each learning place We've set up a summary, and there are some reflection prompts for people to think about each of those topics. And what we've managed to do was, using the discussion thread, is set up a personal reflection. So their second assessment is their written reflection. So as they're working through, just say the current process is you have to keep your own Word document. And if you're like me, you'll save that document when you're working, and a week later when you come back, you can't find where you saved it, so you start a new one. This then allows you to create your own individual thread. Obviously, I can see them all as the instructor, but you'll only be able to see your own. And so then you can add your own reflection. So when it comes time to your final assessment or your final reflection, you've got those as you've been working through each of the topics to build on. So these aren't linked to the grade center or grade book in here. And then you'll be able to upload your assessment. The other advantage is, once you've done the quiz, it's connected into Grade Center. Once your assessments, your written reflections marked, it'll go into the Grade Center. It will then generate an email with your final result once that's entered in, saying that your certificate is available for download. So the system will automatically generate that certificate for you. So we don't have to do that process anymore. We've also set this up with intelligent agents. So in here, they're intelligent agents. So that if you have submitted or completed the quiz, and it's been that 2-week period and you haven't got a result in for your reflection, the system will automatically generate an email to you reminding you that you've already completed the first assessment and that you will need to submit the reflection for your final result. So we're waiting to try it. In terms of content, a lot easier to use. Found it so much easier than Blackboard as well. And I think for me, being game enough just to try things and go, okay, that didn't work. I just cancel rather than save and try again. And working out, so when we looked at this, what it allowed us to do, the legal system, for example, what used to be topic 7 or 8 previously. So we'd already been through education, housing, and health and well-being, but people actually had a look at the legal system yet and how that accumulative effect of those previous practices and policies have actually led to health and well-being today. So we've reorganised those. So it allows you to do that a lot quicker with the click and drag. So I guess really we've been showing this to our user groups, our community groups, as well as our elders, and what they're able to do, because they can just look straight at the topics. So for example, our Wagga group, when they looked at the style and generation, said, but we don't actually have a topic around the importance of family and kinship and structures, because they can see it straight away. In the current site, you've got to scroll through the pages to see what the content is. And so that module then came in, or that topic got created based on that feedback. Okay. And looking forward for questions later.
Thanks very much, Lloyd. Thank you so much. Really interesting. And there've been some chat in the chat area, and Lachlan's answering questions as we go. And I wanted to thank Michelle Plast for putting this all together for us all too. Michelle, thank you. It's good to see you here, and the whole LMS team. If we could make sure we're all on mute, that'd be great. There were some noises coming in while we were talking. Thank you very much. Let me quickly share again, going now to next one. I think, Hector, are you doing this one, or have I got it wrong around the wrong way?
Carolyn is going to start with that one.
Yeah. Carolyn, off you go. Thanks, Carolyn. Just tell me when you'd like me to stop sharing.
Here I am, off mute. Thanks, Lisa, and thanks, Hector. Thanks for the opportunity, Lisa, to talk about the work we've been doing. Just putting this in context, Hector and I are presenting together from the perspectives, I guess, of course, director and of Hector, who's written and built this subject. So I want to talk briefly about the context and the principles that we've put this together in, and then he's going to actually be taking you through specifically what we've been doing. So we've been designing and writing the university's new enabling programs, or courses, which are going to replace the Pathways courses. So we've been in the privileged position of building the Access Child Sturt Entry course as a completely new subject in ACE. And today we're going to talk about one of those 4 core compulsory subjects. The subject we're talking about is ACE 003, Thinking Critically. So could we go to the next slide rather than me screen sharing? Is that okay? Yep, terrific. Thank you. So I guess what we're talking about is the fact that we've come into the course looking to work with some very specific design principles around enabling and transition pedagogy, so specifically around scaffolding, community and accessibility. But because we don't have a lot of time today, we're talking about one subject. What we'd like to talk about specifically is the way those principles can be enacted in Brightspace in relation to assessment. So talking about the way that Brightspace has provided an opportunity to effectively action those principles, what we want to show is that element of accessibility, specifically through the ease of allowing our students or designing assessments that enable multimodal submission and that provide for a very easy way for us to provide feedback, verbal recorded feedback, which is very complex in I2 or has multiple steps in I2, but in Brightspace becomes much simpler. We want to talk about purposeful engagement, because what we want to look at for our students is not just whether or not they do assessments, but how we can keep an eye on how purposefully they're engaged adjacent to their assessment. And the instrument that we want to show you today is how we've actually embedded assessment in forums to ensure that level of student engagement, so through graded discussion. And we also want to talk about the way that Brightspace enables self-directed learning, or in terms of our curriculum principles, what we'd probably talk about as self-regulated learning. How do we keep our students safely progressing so we don't get that crisis at assessment points? And we want to talk about the way that we can use the checklist for that, both in assessments and as a way of students stepping themselves through the content. And we also want to talk about how and show you, so it's Hector who's going to be doing the showing, how content chunking also enables that and is facilitated through the use of the tool that we are very, very taken with, which is the checklist. Now, a couple of other things. When Hector takes you into ACE 003, Thinking Critically, you'll notice some things that won't necessarily be seen in other subjects. One of those is very specific to our enabling pedagogy, which is this idea of creating digital community for students. And the way that we've done that is through a very evidence-based way of providing for student face and student voice in our subjects. So we use a lot of student video and a lot of student image specifically in our subjects. With thanks to Mike and Ryan and the team, we've been enabled to build subject banners that provide for lots of images of students. Our online students will be surrounded by images of students like themselves. The other thing that you'll notice is that we specifically work in these subjects, in our ACE subjects, in modules. And the reason we've done that, modules 1, 2, 3, and 4, is not just around content chunking, but we're looking around long-term sustainability and longevity for these subjects and the potential as enabling subjects for them to be delivered as micro subjects. So they are all very purposefully designed in 4 modules so that we've got the option down the track of effectively breaking them in half and potentially delivering them across the micro sessions so that we can intensively deliver university preparation across the summer period. But I'm going to hand over to Hector, and he's going to take you in detail through how we're enacting this through the subject thinking critically. Over to you, Hector.
Thank you. Lisa, could we go back to the last slide before I share my screen, please? So just on this slide, I'm just going to briefly give you an overview of the things I'm going to be covering. So the next one, Lisa, the one after. I'm going to be...
Oh, we might be missing one.
We might
I
be
can
missing one.
screen share.
Or that's fine. I can just talk about
Okay.
it. So basically, it's just the overview of what I'm going to be talking about. So the first thing is I'm going to be talking about embedding graded discussions. I'm also going to be talking about multimodal and hybrid submissions. I'll talk about alternative modes of feedback, and then I'll move on to engagement and grading and how we can look at data in how we grade assessments or to help us grade assessments. Some of the things I'll be mentioning in the next few slides relate to student benefits that students will get in Brightspace and how we design the subject, things in student engagement, for example, and things also related in an improvement of the learning environment for them. But also, there's also an important component that sometimes we think about, but maybe we don't share it as much, is that this also makes things a lot easier for academics in terms of use of tools, implementation of tools, and maintenance of those tools. All right, so what I'll do now, I'm gonna share my screen. So this is what the subject looks like in Brightspace. So as you can see, we are using those images that Caroline was talking about, those student images. But first, let's talk about the graded discussion. And we are focusing on graded discussion because for this subject, thinking critically, discussions are very important. It's a way for students to engage with material that is sometimes very complex, and they can discuss those things with their peers. So we think that's very important. A graded discussion is a type of assessment in Brightspace, the same way that we have blog submissions, journal tests, ISTs in I2, we have graded discussions. So a graded discussion is basically a forum discussion that is linked to the grade center or the grade book. So how are these graded discussions different to I2? So just to give an example, in I2, we have the forums. These are not linked to the grade center. So what we sometimes do is we create Padlets, and the Padlets are very engaging, but again, there's some shortcomings that we have to keep maintaining, that they're not linked to the grade center. Sometimes what we do in some of our subjects, we use blog assessments. In the blog assessments, as probably a lot of you are familiar with, the students can post something, it's linked to the grade center, but there are some limitations in the type of submissions that the students can do in terms of the format, and also in how students respond as well. Just as a quick example, with a blog assessment, a student posts something and another student can comment, and it's just a text box. So that's basically what it looks like. So there's some limitations. It doesn't present also as well for a discussion. It's more like sharing things. So there's some differences there. In I2, also students can view other student submissions even before they put something, whereas what we're going to be talking about in the graded discussion is students can only view another student submission after they post something. So now looking at the thinking critically in Brightspace, you can see that the modules, we have them there. We have chunked the modules like that. We have then topics within those modules. And before I show you the graded discussion, I just want to give you just some context about the assessment that I'm going to be talking about. This assessment, the students need to find an image that portrays a contemporary issue. And from that image, the students need to give an explanation of why they should think critically about that issue. They also should extract some beliefs that are portrayed in that image, and then they engage in discussion with their peers. So a few elements, and this is the graded discussion. So that's it. That's the task. I'll show you exactly how that looks like. So we're in the modules. This is at the end of module 2, and there is a link at the end of that page that says, click here to go into that assessment. And that would take the students to that graded discussion. There's some instructions there, and then at the bottom, you will see the student submissions. As you can see, it's very well organized. They also, you can keep track of submissions very easily. There's a search function as well. And more importantly, it allows for a hybrid type of submission, meaning that students can post things in writing, they can post video, they can post audio, they can upload files, but they can also do a combination of those things. So it doesn't have to be text or video. They can decide what they want to do. For this assessment, the student needs to put an image and then respond to the image, whether in voice, video, or writing, or a combination of those things. All right, so what I'll do now, I'll show you an actual submission here. I give thanks to my colleague V. She was very kind to put a submission so that I can show it today. So looking at that submission, I can just click on it. And this is her submission. So we can see there are multiple elements. We have an image. By the way, this is an image that she took. There is the explanation of the image, what we should think critically about that, the beliefs that are presented in the image. And she also put an audio where she explains her thinking about the image and the contemporary issue. So there are multiple elements in this hybrid submission. And by the way, this is very easy for students to do. In I2, the students can, in blog assessments, for example, post a video. That's possible, but it's not as easy for them to do it. And I'll just give you a quick demonstration of what that, or how that works if I'm going to post something. So if I'm going to create a post, I just click on Start New Thread. They call them threads, but it's part of the same assessment. I can put a title, and then basically I just click on this icon that says Insert Stuff, and I can just click on Add Video Note, and from there, automatically my webcam is on, and I can just start from there recording. I can just select audio if I want to. It's up to me, up to 30 minutes. I finish that, and then automatically it goes into my post. I can also add attachments. I can put a file. I can put an image and multiple things. That also applies, by the way, to comments. So if I want to comment, or a student wants to comment on a post, is the same, is hybrid. They can use, for example, if I want to comment on this one, or a student wants to comment on that, they can just select the type of comment they want to give. For example, here, reply to thread. They can just do it in writing, or they can also add an image, voice, or video. So that just brings discussions to really another level, things that we haven't seen in I2, and especially for subjects, in this case, like critical thinking, this is very important. Okay, so now that we talked about what the assessment looks like in terms of graded discussion, I want to show you then how we do the feedback. And let's continue with the same example of the graded discussion. So if I then click on grades, that's where I can see my students' submissions. At the moment, I only have V, who was enrolled here just for the purposes of this discussion. I can see that she has completed assessment 2. I have already graded that assessment, so I can just click on that and see what that grading, or how the grading happens, and some differences as well. I can see all of the elements of her assessment. I can see the image, I can read the text, I can also hear the recording as well. There is an embedded rubric here. This rubric is not too different, for example, to the embedded rubrics in I2 for blog assessments. I think, however, I think they look a bit better. They're easier to use. But what I want to focus on is on the feedback section. So in this feedback section, we can do a multiple of things. We can upload things. We can also do video or audio feedback. So for a bit of context, in the enabling courses in some of the subjects like Gen 173, we have implemented video feedback for a number of years. There we have a lot of positive feedback from students and academics about giving that feedback and also receiving the feedback. And it's something that we want to continue on doing. The way that we do it currently is by doing a Zoom recording to the cloud with the feedback. And once we finish the feedback, then Zoom would then process the video. Then we wait maybe a few minutes. Then they send us a link. Then we use the link to then put it there in the textbook, for example, for a blog submission. We put the link and write some words, put the embedded rubric, and that's the feedback that we give. However, here, I can just, as an academic, I can just go and click on this plus button, then click on insert stuff. And again, I can go straight into my webcam and do recorded video or audio feedback. I can also upload a file. I can do multiple things. I did a test on this, not that I need to show you my feedback, but just so you can see how it's embedded as well. It's not just a link, it's embedded there. So students can just go here, click, and watch the feedback. So that's really, really different. Okay, now that I talked about this, I want to show you another tool that we're using in this subject, and that is the checklist tool. So to show you the checklist tool, I'm just going to change my view to the learner view, just so you can actually see the checklist and how it works. And the checklist, the purpose of this checklist is for students to help students go in like steps to complete their assessment. So it's a tool that will help them get there. So they know exactly what they need to do. If they do those things, then they very likely are going to have a good assessment. We have checklists for all modules at the end of each module. And this is going to look like this. So we have it here at the end of this module. It's also a link that is embedded into the material and looks like this. So in this checklist, we have, for example, here we have questions that we want students to ask before they even begin the task. I know what a contemporary issue is. I know how we use critical thinking at university. I know what context we use critical thinking. And they can tick on things and say, yep, I know that. We have exemplars. So this is an exemplar of the assessment, even with an audio example as well. So I have looked at the exemplars as well. I have read the past requirements and they can tick on that. I have, for example, I have drafted my post and so on. I have chosen an image that illustrates that issue. All of the things that we think, well, that students should do for the assessment are in this checklist. The checklist itself is not an assessment. It's a tool for students to help them progress through that assessment. Also, the students don't need to complete the checklist at once, for example, in just one day. They can say, well, today I'm going to focus on one item. I'm going to go into the first few items, and they can tick on that and just save. And it tells them where the date and time where they completed that, or where they checked that item in the list. It doesn't only end here, then it allows a lot of important data for the academics. So this is something that I want to show you now. So if I go then back to my student list, and by the way, this checklist is something that we are also planning on using as an embedded task. So not just as a tool to help students complete an assessment, but also is part of the assessment to do the checklist. All right, let's have a look at here. Grades. I clicked the wrong button before. Or maybe I need to leave the learner view. That's why. Okay, I'm going back to the academic view. And here I can see next to the name of that student, there is a graph icon. If I click on that graph icon, it's going to give me a lot of really interesting data on that student. By the way, I can get data not just on one student, I can get data on a whole class or a cohort, and I can check many different things. For example, I can see the summary. So that's really an overview of what that student has been doing in terms of grades, what content they have covered, discussions they have participated in. For example, I can click here and it tells me that they participated in these discussions, assignments, quizzes, also the checklist. So that's really helpful, because if I'm giving feedback to a student and I have a checklist that is attached to an assessment, and I look at the progress of my student and I see that they haven't completed the checklist, that's also can inform the feedback that I give to the student. That can inform my feed forward. In the next assessment, I would like you, for example, to ensure that you complete the checklist and things like that. So all of these data would be very helpful. Again, it could be helpful for students in terms of progressing in their assessment, but also very helpful information for the academics. So thank you for your attention, and back to you, Lisa.
I'm back. Thank you very, very much. Great questions in the chat too. And so thank you very much, Hector. That was really useful. And thank you, Carolyn, for the overview at the beginning. We're really picking up some specifics that we can take away. So that's fantastic. Thank you. I think we'll all be using the checklist for sure. So thank you very much. I'm just going to share again, and we're now moving on to Kathy Finlay. Kath, over to you.
Thank you so much. I think the best part about me going last here is everybody has covered a lot of the points that I was going to talk about, which is just fantastic. But I'm just going to share my screen.
I'll stop sharing.
Oh, sorry, Lisa.
No, that's okay. Done. Yep.
Over there. There we go. It's better. So in terms of what I was going to talk about, I think I was going to talk about it from, I guess, 3 different views. First of all, just from the student, and everybody I think has already mentioned this, many of these things in terms of when a student comes to their, I guess this is the equivalent of their, Interact or their Interact page. They've got all their courses here and things like that. These checklists also come across into the very front page. So even if you haven't gone into any subject, you can kind of see that you might have some due dates if you've built that into the subject itself. So in terms of this subject, which is the marketing and action subject that I teach, again, the same kind of thing, that in terms of working through the material, I should have swapped to the learner view. And certainly kind of from the different roles I do, things like neurodiversity come up a lot in kind of how students navigate this. And the difference, I think, between the two is, let's say topic 1 is here in terms of Interact. You start here and you scroll and you scroll and you scroll, and you're not really sure where you're going, where it's going to end, how much should you do today, how much do you keep going, or how does what the topic 1 relate to topic kind of the end topic. We're here just I'm not sure if it might have been Lloyd showed, you can see all of these aspects here on the left, very clear for everyone to understand where you're going. Again, the module checklist, Hector, I just learned something from you. I didn't realize we could do it for assessments, but I've just done it for modules, so still learning. But in terms of the module, making sure that we know what those key concepts are, the couple of key things that they need to go to do, and again, just being able to check them off. And of course, the same kind of data applies, that students are, you can actually see this from the back end, just as Hector showed as well. So I just find from a student experience, and I think also Lloyd mentioned this, it is just a really clean, simple, and very easy to navigate experience. However, some of the other things that I have found, probably just from teaching this or designing this, or and redoing some of this, is how easy some of this is from lecturers or designers' point of view to really kind of play around with this. So normally, so much of the interactivity comes from, getting the amazing educational designers to do H5P activities and how they're all embedded, where so much of it is just a part of this program. So, if we've asked the students to do this reading, we can really simply put in 3 or 4 multiple choice questions or a quick quiz or something that students can just test their knowledge as they go through. And so rather than always having to outsource things to the amazing, educational designers, there's so much control over, we can, do those little self-checks and things. So I'm not going to go much more into this subject, because I think from that academic point of view, the others have covered that quite well. But the place that we've spent the most amount of time, and certainly a big part of why I was involved in this, is through the Strive and the Student Leadership Development Program. So for anybody who doesn't know, we have a student leadership development program called Strive. And as a program itself, there's 10 modules. You get a certificate of completion that goes on your AHEGS, and that's all lovely. But what we actually see more of than anything else is actually academics asking for students to do just particular modules. And so what we've had before, I did have it open, and again, it's very similar to what Lloyd was talking about. All of Strive sits in Open Learning, which is a separate platform, separate login, same kind of thing. Once they've completed, Open Learning sends us something. We have to process it. We have to send it back to here. We have to send it to the lecturers, or we have to upload it somewhere else. So it's quite a convoluted process. And of course, I always have this like small issue with student data, particularly in terms of students who have to complete these modules as a part, even to progress in their course. So I always kind of would like that data to sit inside. So instead of now having to go to Open Learning to kind of see that, we could, as much as we're in kind of my site here, what we will then have is a site that looks like this, that belongs to the Careers and Skills team. And what we see here, instead of these are just the sample ones, this might say Strive Leadership. This might be the student leadership the student training course. This might be job applications for the international students. This might be the elite professional, agricultural program. So students will be able to come in and just, without having to leave Brightspace, actually undertake any of the short professional courses that we do. However, I think kind of the extra super favorite part for me in terms of how easy this is now to use, and I think I did notice Jared was in here. So I think Jared was one of our lecturers who has, it might even just be this subject, goals and motivation, as a part of a requirement for his subject. And so now there it was, Jared. I thought I saw your name. So instead of Jared kind of now going, hey, Kath, can you please set up this? And if you could do this, and then I have to mark them off, and then I'll go back this. What we can now do is we'll kind of go into this goals and motivation. This is still a work in progress, so some of them are not yet complete. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm in learner mode, so it's stuck back out at that. So this will be really important for things like wellbeing and workplace learning, which is I think it's kind of looking at being a compulsory part of lots of workplace learning courses. So instead of it all having to be external, what I will be able to do is go, here's goals and motivation. I'm just going to publish it to, I may have made this up, and if there's somebody official here, I think this is like the learning object repository, which in my kind of head is something like, what we'd see as DOM. So I publish this to the learning object repository. And then Jared or whoever is getting these kind of modules, whether it's goals, motivation, leadership, job applications, whatever, they then go into their subject site and then they download it from the learning object repository. So rather than students even having to leave the subject site to go to careers or even Open Learning, I'll just, if I was embedding it in here, it will then just be embedded and sit perfectly and seamlessly in the subject that already exists. So they won't be kind of jumping in and jumping out. And poor Jared and the lots and lots of other lecturers who are perpetually saying, can you give me an update, give me an update, give me an update, will no longer have to ask that, because they will be able to connect this directly to their gradebook, and it's much more seamless to embed everything across. So yeah, they were kind of really my 3 points. Is I think from a student point of view, and I've been a student at a few universities, and certainly Canvas was probably my favorite one up until I've seen Brightspace. Not that I've actually got to use the back end of Canvas, but this has been so easy and pleasant and fun. I have used the word fun quite a lot in this. I've actually really enjoyed creating the content in here, and I just think it's a really enjoyable experience. From a student point of view, I think it's just so easy to navigate and understand where you're up to and be able to tackle small amounts. I do think things that Hector and Lloyd have covered, particularly with the feedback and things, are just so fantastic and so, I think, seamless. Instead of having to go out here to do that, then embed here, it's all just in one place, which I just think is so easy. And of course, for me, the last one, in just terms of the system, it'll again just kind of being able to take that module and just pop it somewhere else, rather than this, getting students to come in and out of different systems. The only one that we're still working on is there will be another course, or one of our courses that's currently in development from the NPILF project, is the Elite Professional Program for ag students. And we're hoping, I see Mike Brighton in the room, so, you know, hoping that Brightspace also has a portfolio tool as well. You look, he's like, he's on it, you know. So what we're hoping is, as a part of that Elite Professional Program, students will be asked to gather evidence that helps to support future job applications. And we've certainly had a number of ag industries sign up with quite a lot of money and opportunities for students who have completed this kind of program. We've got staff working on that at the moment. And so students will be able to, you know, walk around potentially with their iPad and just kind of say, I have an opportunity here to take a photo of this, record some feedback from somebody I've just worked with, upload it directly into their portfolio, which I think for many of us is pretty much, it's very similar to PebblePad, but it'll be the Brightspace version. And again, it's not that PebblePad isn't good, but this, again, all in one system, all in together. And again, like Hector mentioned, it allows that lots of, you know, multimodal, interesting ways. So rather than just say, you know, my boss gave me really great feedback today, you can just take a short video of them saying, this is what you did and this is great, and upload it to, you know, really build out that portfolio, that professional portfolio in terms of, you know, then going into job applications, and certainly for the opportunities that are being developed at the moment, MOUs with businesses around offering jobs. But
thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. And we're all writing notes, and Hector's put a screenshot in there of what that actually looks like. We do have a portfolio option in Brightspace, so it's all very, very positive. So thank you so much. We're going to go to a quick question to the panel and then open it up for overall questions. So let me just get back into here. These are a few slides that Kathy sent us just in case sharing didn't work. So, Lachlan, could you please just ask this question to the panel and have a quick discussion? Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lisa, and thank you to each of the panelists for taking us through a small part of all of the building, etc., that they've been doing in this space over the past months, etc. And given that you've had that exposure now to Brightspace's building toolset, we just wanted to see from each of you if we could touch on just one aspect of what you've seen Brightspace is capable of. What are you looking forward most to in terms of next year when we get to use the system for our delivery? I might start with Lloyd.
Similar to my presentation, less work, less manual work. Just play with what it'll do. And even having a look yesterday, I was thinking in terms of some of our subjects, you know, that intelligent agent that if students haven't engaged in the subject, automatically generates that. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
And you found even setting up intelligent agent, which is obviously going to be a new feature for a lot of people coming into this space, a relatively simple process, Lloyd?
Certainly was, because I contacted the team and they did it for me.
Yeah.
But I've been playing, so we've got one set up. So now I'm actually playing and creating some new ones just to see how that process works. And so you can create several and then you can basically have a bank and then you can apply or not apply.
Yeah, reusability is something I'm certainly seeing a lot in the system. You make it once the way you want to and then roll it out again and again as needed. So yeah, it's a great point. Thank you, Lloyd. Carolyn, I might go with this question to you next.
I think Lloyd hijacked me a little bit with the less work thing, because I was thinking particularly about the, at the moment, manual labor in grading and managing assessment. But I think probably the more valuable thing for me with new courses is the responsiveness, because our team have now all, bar one or two who are away, who will pick up on it, done the creator training. And what we'll be able to do is to really adjust content and have that level of, I guess, DIY, certainly to have support, but the freedom to create, to adjust, to respond to student need in the learning material. I think that's huge as an educator, just to have that level of immediate autonomy.
Absolutely. Hector, your take on that?
Sure. I have to. So for academics, I think is the ease of marking and tracking student progression. I think that's really massive. Data analytics, really good. I think that's going to be a really big one for academics. In terms of student point of view, I think the graded discussions, I think in I2 forums is probably the biggest shortcoming of that LMS. In Brightspace, I think the forum discussions, graded discussions, I honestly think they're like a game changer. I think we can get students to discuss things more easily, share more things, and I think this is really good.
Absolutely. And look, I share your sentiments completely in terms of the grading workflow and how that allows us to do everything now in the one spot in such a seamless and integrated way. That's the thing I'm looking most forward to as well. Kath, what's your take?
Look, for me, it's the same, less work, particularly with one thing I didn't mention is something like the modules that can, for example, be copied across. So the wellbeing and workplace learning subject, which is done, I think we've had about 3,000 students do it last year. That's not a module. It's like a copy of a copy, and then it gets copied and it gets copied and it gets copied across. If I copied that module into every academics kind of space here, and then I realize there's a typo, I go into my master site, I fix the one typo, flows through to everybody. And for me, the idea of not having to jump around and fix that in 20 different places is, yeah, huge for me.
It's a great point. Thank you, Lisa. Have we...
Thank you very much, Lachlan. That's fantastic. I am now going to open it to the floor to questions. Luckily, we've had folks having their questions already answered by Lachlan and Michelle and Mike and others in the chat. But does anyone have a question you'd like to ask or bring up as a whole? Noelia. You're on mute at the moment, Noelia.
There we go. I'm unmuted now. Really quickly, I love the new LMS. I've spent a bit of time watched a few people playing it. I've been able to do that. I have a quick question. The more and more I see, obviously there's a lot of things that we can do online that, are embedded into the LMS. Just wondering how that's going to go, and have we really, thought about what happens with students that have really low connectivity or that don't have connections at home? How does that track in terms of their ability to complete work when a lot of this stuff is only going to be able to be completed on that online space? I'm just wondering, everything just seems to be going that way, which is great, very easy for marking and things like that. But how are we going to combat that for students that don't have that connectivity?
Thanks, Noelia. I'm opening that up to the experts like Lachlan or Mike.
I think that one is a good one for Mike, probably to wade in on. Ideally, I would probably say just briefly from my point of view that the tools that have been built into the LMS itself certainly have things like bandwidth and file size, etc., as a part of their considerations to try and minimize those and make them as uncumbersome as possible. That's my first impression on it. But Mike, would you like to wade in on that one?
There, yeah, Mike's
Can I just quickly say, look, it's not so much that I worry about. So we have a lot of students that, for example, may not have internet at home. So they'll go and do their tasks, offline. They'll go and grab them. And normally we don't mark things like Padlets. We don't mark things like these online activities or checklist, or if we're going to be, do you know what I mean? Like they don't have to be done online. That's sort of what I'm asking, because, we have some courses definitely where students, sit in a McDonald's car park still to get internet. And as things are getting tougher and tougher in terms of, cost of living, where will that leave those students all the tasks are directly linked online to Grade Centre? Sorry, I'll hand over now.
Thanks, Noelle. I think we've got an answer. Mike, go for it.
Brightspace implementation is about providing a more up-to-date system. It's not by stealth making students spend more time online than they currently do. That's not, so there's no change to the assessment regimes that we have within the university. There's full support for offline working within Brightspace, and there's been a little bit of that in the chat. And the system itself is also geared towards delivery to students in a low bandwidth setting in the way that, Lachlan, you've indicated, much more effectively in the current environment by having fewer applications, by putting more restrictions around the image types and the amount of content and the amount of code you can put in just to help with that page load. And by reducing the complexity of the system, we do stand to give students a lot of benefit. But I would definitely want to reassure anybody who's concerned, this isn't a kind of by stealth move to change the dial on the amount of learning we make students do online. Far from it. The design, the procurement and design process considered those elements of the university's operation fully.
Yep. I just see that there's so many advantages to a lot of those options online. I can see everyone jumping on like we do with a lot of as technology changes. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, yep, that looks great. Let's all do it. So that's just a thing to think about when we're looking at assessment redesign and I guess that course redesign space as well. I'd like, yeah.
Noelia, I'm going to put it out there and say the PDFs, when they download from the page, are so much nicer than Interact. Like, they just look so much better. So it's actually, if you were downloading them, the pages as PDFs, they're much nicer as well.
Thanks, Kath. Thanks, Noelia. Okay, Jared.
Thanks. I'm just going to build on sort of what I put in chat in regards to what Hector was talking about with the video interaction, where students can record and upload videos within the what we call forum at the moment. I'm not sure what it's going to be called in Brightspace. I was just wondering, do you have an example of how it looks when there are multiple videos? So where a student has perhaps well, not a student because you've done it in the test phase at the moment, but how it might look when there are videos responding to other videos, or when there are multiple videos on the one question. So I'm not sure if I'm being clear. I'm only asking because I'm actually presenting on an assessment that I have in one of my subjects. So tomorrow I'm presenting on this assessment that is based on video sharing. So where students record little videos and present something, and then they respond with videos and they respond with comments. And at the moment I use an external program, an external website for that, and that's basically what I'm presenting on tomorrow. And it'd be brilliant, obviously, if Brightspace can do this. It's just the external program I use is custom made for that kind of thing, so it looks amazing. So the videos are all next to each other, and the way it appears to the student is really, really cool. So I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, I think Hector, you were showing that, weren't you, in your page?
Yeah, so I think I don't have an example because we have done just the testing at this stage, but I would imagine it would look like a thread where if there is a response, if it's text, it will look just below, and if it's a video, it will be a little icon like a video embedded or responding to the post. And if there's a response in video to that, it will kind of like work as a thread, like it works probably in things like Reddit and things like that, like normal threads, I think. Mm-hmm. I haven't tested it, but I'm also interested. Also, one of the questions that I saw on the chat about the filters, like what people are saying in these videos and recordings, can we track that? I don't think we can. However, in this particular subject in Thinking Critically, there is a module or a topic in a module about constructive dialogue, and we focus a lot on the type of discussions that we want students to use when engaging with other students.
How to give feedback, warm and cool feedback and all that sort of stuff. Great. Thank you. Lachlan, did you want to add anything there?
Oh, look, only that when they have specific external tools that are made for those type of sort of carousel or gallery type views of multiple videos, and I've seen a number of those tools used in the past, my first take on that is it's probably unlikely that the LMS is going to be able to do it better than the particular tool that's done that in terms of using it. I've seen a few of them that do it, but it's not that. I mean, every student will have the capacity, obviously, to make video contributions within the discussion tool or any of their submission types. We just need to have a look at what that looks like at scale to give you an informed response on that, Jared. That's all.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks, Jared. So that's going to be something that we'll follow up for sure. Great question. Do we have any other questions from the floor? Well, I would like to thank everyone. I would especially like to thank Lloyd, Carolyn, Hector and Kath for the presentations today and for your enthusiasm and the joy which you've brought to this. We needed that. We needed this pick-me-up. So thank you so much for that. I'd like to thank Lachlan and Michelle for helping me get this sorted today. And of course, the whole LMS project team for the great work you're doing. And Mike, it was great to see you here today helping us answer some questions. I thank everyone very much. The trick now, is there a survey, Sheila? Is there a survey to complete at the end of this? I've lost my notes. So do we have a survey? Lachlan, do we know if there's a survey? Mark?
It's in there just now, Lisa.
It's there. There it is.
Just put it in.
Sheila, I should have just waited. I'm just a little bit OCD. Thank you very, very much. The survey is there. Please complete it for this session. We really value your feedback. I think this has been an amazing session, and I thank you all very much. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.